You're on Our Voice with Amina, where there's no stigma, no shame, only on Relax Radio Bangla. Asha kori shob bala asoin, shusto asoin. Thank you for joining me on today's show, which is about daughter-in-law and mother-in-law relationships in modern life. There, amra bow horir সম্পর্ক লইয়া, the নতুন জামানার মাঝে আমরা কিলা চলাফেরা করি, and আমরা হরিও ইয়া কিলা চলি, বউ ইয়া কিলা চলি, and a relationship kila আমরা in modern times killer and how we can make it better. আপনারা একটু চিন্তা করুকা এই টপিক লইয়া, so আমার একজন গেস্ট আছেন and একজন mysterious guest আছেন anonymous, but আমরা এই সম্পর্কে লইয়া পুরা মাতিমুনে ও ব্রেক করে, so একটা ইন্ট্রো ব্রেক লইয়া আমরা আই।
সকাল দুপুর সন্ধ্যা রাতে তোমার আমার কথা হবে রিল্যাক্স রেডিও বাংলায়, রিল্যাক্স রেডিও বাংলা,
রিল্যাক্স রেডিও বাংলা, সারাদিন সারাক্ষণ।
রেডিও বাংলা ফ্রিকোয়েন্সিস।
Welcome back to Our Voice with Amina. So as I said before, আমরা topic হইলো আইজ আমরা হরিবর সম্পর্ক লইয়া। So maybe আপনারা কেউ বউ হইতা পারেন, maybe কেউ হরিও হইতা পারেন, maybe আপনারা দুইটা হইতা পারেন। And plus সময় লগে একটা কিলা চেঞ্জ হইছে, যে হয়তো একজন হরি যে সময় বউ আসলা কিলা আসলা, এখন কিলা টাইম চেঞ্জ হইছে, and এই দুইটা অত ভাইটাল রোল একটা ফ্যামিলির মাঝে, যে এটা কত ইম্পর্টেন্ট, বাট এই সম্পর্ক আমরা কিলা মেইনটেইন করিয়া রাখতাম পারি, বালা রাখতাম পারি, ওটা লইয়া আইসকো আমরা মাতিমু। তো আমার আইসকো গেস্ট আছেন Khaleda, Hakim. So do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, Assalamualaikum. Thank you for having me here, Amina. Assalamualaikum viewers, I hope everyone's well. আমার নাম হলো Khaleda Hakim. আমি আসলে একটা family solicitor. আমি mainly deal করি family work, domestic abuse work, বাচ্চান্তর লইয়া কাম, আর anything to do with family members divorce, finance ওটা লইয়া deal করি। Mainly আমার খামার মাঝে বহুত মানুষ আছেন যারা ডোমেস্টিক ভায়োলেন্সের লগে আইন, আর যে টপিক আইসকো আমরা মাতিমু ও টপিক লইয়া বহুত মাত কথা ডিলিং আমি করি।
Okay, thank you for that. So let's jump into it straight away. So in your তোমার professional life or mazeki, khotor homor story situation, you see it all, right? Yeah. So in your experience, I try like in amdar modern zamanar maze bohorir je relationship ase, jodi bala থাকে না, does it affect the husband and wife, and do you see that from a professional point of view?
Yeah, so obviously I've been practicing for 10 odd years. আর 10 বছর ধরে এটা কাম করি আছি। 10 বছরের মাঝে উত্তলা কেস হল আছে, দেখছি পার্সোনালি জানি, প্রফেশনালি দেখছি যে বাইদি হরি আর বউর মাঝে সম্পর্ক ঠিক থাকে না, আর এই কারণের লাগি জামাই বউর মাঝে প্রবলেম আই হয়। এটা একটা কমন একটা প্রবলেম, আর এটা আগে বেশি হইতো। আমরা মনে হচ্ছে এখন তো জমানা বদলি যায় আরো, you know, it's a modern era, people are changing, we're British, we've got a different upbringing to people in Bangladesh, and you'd think এই সময় বহুতটা জিনিস বদলিব, but unfortunately এই situation যে বাইদি হরিণ আর বউর মাঝে প্রবলেম থাকে, এটা এবত কি আছে আমরা জেনারেশনের মাঝে, and that does affect one's relationship with one's spouse.
Okay, that does like one relationship affect with the family, it ends up in divorce?
Of course.
Yeah,
of course.
You see that as
I've
well?
seen it personally, I've seen it professionally, and yes, it does end up in divorce because জামাইয়ে খারফক কইতা, you know, বউ রং থাকলে বউরে যদি মায়া করেন, দেন obviously সাইন না যেন বউর লগে প্রবলেম হইতো, your মা যদি রং করেন মারে রং হইতা চাইরা না, so obviously এটার মাঝে জামাই আটকে যায়, আর ও কারণের লাগি জামাই বউর মাঝে একটা আর্গুমেন্ট শুরু হয়ে যায়, তুমি একটা কম্প্রোমাইজ করে লাও না হানে, তুমি এটা অ্যাকসেপ্ট করে লাও না হানে, আচ্ছা এটা বাদ দিলাও না হানে, you know, আর ওটা লইয়া এসে প্রবলেম হয়। sometimes জামাইতে হরিণতে লগেও ওয়াইফের লগে বাদ ব্যবহার করেন, and এটা আমি বহুত দেখছি, as a result, yeah, bange.
So on the flip side of that, have you seen positive relationships between a daughter-in-law and mother-in-law?
Yes, I have. Sometimes you'd see that even professionally, wife হলা ইয়া কইবা যে না আমার হর হরিণ আমার পক্ষে মাত্র আমার জামাই বাদ or tara even personally দেখছি যে বাইদি হর হরিণ তে মায়ের বোন তোরে মায়া করন জামাই ঠিক নাই জামাই domestic abuse করা এটা professionally দেখছি personally ও দেখছি ইলা situation so ইলা situation yes.
Okay, so slowly moving on from that then, একটা বৌহরি like এক ঘরের মাঝে can they live together একলগে থাকতে পারেননি, and can we expect that as Khail from our new generation to live together?
I know of a number of married couples who do live with their in-laws. So you can, yes, you can live with your in-laws. Yeah, but obviously
but expectations in these days
it's hard. So jodi hori modern ta hoin as a modern mane i society amra khila sole Britain maze shob khila soloin manshe jan kham koron bohla kham hori ta jodi accept koriya jaita par of course you can. But problem hilo jara traditional mindset takhe jara horin to traditional mindset takhe then on dekhena kham hotta বলতে গরু মাঝে রান্তইবা মেহমানদারি করতেইবা মেহমানদের look after করতেইবা আমার ফুয়া গরু আইবো আমার ফুয়ারে look after করতেইবা ইলা মাইন্ডসেট থাকলে then obviously difficult হয়ে যায় because যদি বউ মনে করে আমিও তো পড়াশোনা করছি নাইলে আমিও তখন আমার খামার মাঝে আগুয়াইছি আমি career wise আমি কন্টিনিউ করতাম চাই আমার বাচ্চা তো লাগে আমি চাই ইনাফ পয়সা থাকতো একটা সেট করে বউ যদি ইলা চিন্তা করে আর হরিয়া চিন্তা করে না 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 আমার মেহমান দেখা পাইতেইবা আমার রান্দি আমার ফুয়া দেখা পাইতেইবা নাইলে আমার গরু থাকতেইবা সামটাইম রান্দা বাড়া নাই সামটাইম হলো আমি চাই আমার বউ গরু থাকতা ইলা যদি মাইন্ডসেট থাকে then no you can't get along and it becomes extremely difficult for a marriage or a family unit to stay together.
Ila rakhto ile to they should probably like fuare biya dita uneducated on যে গরু থাকতে পারবো রান্না বাড়া করতে পারবো
তুমি not even uneducated whoever's happy to stay at home
but তুমি দেখি আনলাই যে educated হইতো যে বালা খাম যে বালা জব but then গরু আনার বাদে তুমি রান্দো গরু থাকো পারা গিয়া খাম করতে কি yeah so we need to change the mindset around that.
Of course okay. I mean in Bangladesh is different. Not certain areas in Bangladesh, I shouldn't say just Bangladesh, certain areas village areas obviously family sign as in bozaya kam korta gaya because village o kam nai so you have to go to Sylhet and obviously ishumoy I know that there are families who don't want their daughter-in-laws to work which is fine but either show it's a little bit different you know furinta kam korra naile tara porashona korson they want to continue and progress their careers and you horino holista dekya anon bo but really হরিণতে আনতা কিতা ফয়েন্তে আনতা সেটা দেখিও কি আনার বাদে যদি এসে না কাম করতে পারতাই না ও
কাম গেলে কোনো প্রবলেম হয় তো ওখানে হইছে না
তো ঠিক না of course
okay but there is also like একটা benefit আছে একলগে থাকিয়া like there might be financial benefits what other things do you think there might be sort of like support or benefit in ek gororoya takia?
So I know a number of families who are living together both but there is benefits of course there is এখন যদি একলগে থাকো তো financial benefit তো আছে সবে contribute করলা that's fine but then বাচ্চা এর একটা cultural benefit থাকে যেন তারা দাদি দাদা কিতা শিখছো বাংলা মাত নাইলে দেশের একটা বেঙ্গলি কালচারের একটা আমরা আছে না নিজে আমরা certain জিনিস করে ওটা বাচ্চাতে benefit করেন obviously staying together you have the comfort of an elderly in your home so there are benefits so long as the parties could all get along and they're happy I
suppose zamai bodi zoneo khamo takhle goro jodi ma bap takhoino bai boin takhoin you get childcare support as well isn't it so there's always someone around obviously financial aspects we've covered even like mental and physical well-being as well isn't it that gumai tam ikhdila min gumaya can you just hold on bachare tu ya gela isinta na je bara
of course tura lagi baro ya gela obviously এটা সত্য আছে বেমার ফলে একজন আসুন গরুর মাঝে ওটা বেনিফিট হল আছে of course but it's obviously a matter for both parties to be able to get along with each other.
So what's the negative side to that how the blacham করে না একলগে থাকা how
obviously একলগে যদি থাকিয়া যদি প্রবলেম হয়, so for example তোমার in-laws সাইন না বউ কাম করতা নাইলে বাইরে যাইতা নাইলে তারা যদি কন্ট্রোল করতে চায় না, তুমি ওটার আগে আইতে হইবা, নাইলে না তুমি হিজাব কিনতে হইবা, না তুমি ইবাই দিয়ে আটকে যাই না, হবাই দিয়ে এবার হলে দেখবা, এটা যদি কন্ট্রোল থাকে then obviously ঠিক নাই, because এই কন্ট্রোলে
সবরও একটা ফ্রিডম
সাইন obviously গরম মাঝে যদি ইতা লইয়া আর্গুমেন্ট থাকে, বউ বেজার হয়ে যাবা, বউ যে জামাইরা হইবা, জামাই এসে মারও হইতে পারেন, নাইলে বউ লোকে দরবার করতে পারেন, বাচ্চা যদি করে তখন বাচ্চা তো ইতা শুনবা, and none of it is good for anyone, especially the children.
And in terms of like আমরা Bengali family মাঝে obviously আমরা বড় family থাকি, so there could also be the problem, the overcrowding, the জায়গা নাই গরুর মাঝে, difference of opinion, difference of parenting even, ওটা লইয়া তো মানুষের দরবার লাগতে পারে. So I think from my point of view is that if those situations are there, the ilazo situation থাকে, then it's best the zarzari ralga roa taka.
Of course.
Overcrowding or maje to tumi bachcha haja falta yarta na. Tumar difference of opinions jodi থাকে তোমার হরির লগে, তুমি না আমি ওলা সাই করতাম আর হেন কইরা না আমি সাই হলা সাই, তো এটা একটা প্রবলেম হই যায়. Of course. বড়ই বার আগে it's best to find solutions.
আলাদা হইতা, sometimes আলাদা হওয়া it doesn't distance you from your in-laws. It actually maintains a better relationship, and it builds a better relationship because you're not in their face. Sometimes, like you said, overcrowding, when you have other, your husband's brothers and sisters living in the house, and their spouses living in the house, and their children, it does get overcrowded. Like for example, if there are people who are quite particular about how they want their house to be. They want it immaculate, they want it clean and tidy, they want the kitchen, everything to be put away into cabinets. And then there's others who are like, exactly. So oto ছোট জিনিসের মাঝে ও প্রবলেম হয়ে যায়, আসলে চাইবা খাবার থেকে কুলিয়া ইউজ করলে কিতা অসুবিধা, আসলে হইবা ইগু বার করিয়া রাখলে অসুবিধা, ছোট জিনিস. Obviously এটা ছোট জিনিস বড় মাইরো না, but if you start having other things as well, other minor little small issues,
বড় হয়ে যায়.
সবাই চায় সবার একটা আলাদা একটা ফ্রিডম থাকতো, আমি চাই আমার গরলা থাকতো, আমি চাই আমার বাচ্চা তোলা থাকতো, আমি চাই আমার একটা সবার একটা টাইম টেবিল থাকে, সবাই চাই সবার একটা সেপারেট ফ্রিডম থাকে, যে আমি ওলা চাই. So obviously একটা জয়েন্ট ফ্যামিলির মাঝে থাকলে everybody has to compromise, not just the daughter-in-law. Everybody has to compromise. তাই আইসে আমরা গরো, তাই আমরা লগে থাকেরো, আমরাও তো compromise করতে হইব. So it's not just she has to compromise just because she's moving into someone else's house. Even you've got to compromise, because someone else is coming into your house. If you want everyone to live together, then you've got to compromise.
You have to create that environment as well. To me, khali exoner gesta ki saita harta na. To me, isn't it? Like you have to create that.
Exactly. Absolutely.
So basically, when girls get married, or let's say আমরা বাইবো দেখাত গেছি, ও আমরা ফারবো দেখাত গেছি, বই আমরা হইমো, আমরা কিচ্ছু করা লাগতো না, রান্না বাড়া করা লাগতো না, আমি আমার রান্দি, আমি আমার ঘর ধরাটাই জাস্ট খালি থাইন আমার ফুয়ারে লুক আফটার করতে আমরা নিজর ফুরির লাখান মনত করি. How much of that do you think is actually true, and can people stick to it?
Personally, যদি আমি শুনি ফুরির লাখান রাহমত, তোরা ডর খামাই যায়. Because হাসাজাটা বউ হলো বউ আর ফুরিন হলো ফুরিন. Unfortunately, most situational maze the paisen furintola zela tara maya hole maya khoroin rakhoin ila bontolog khoroin na. That's the reality. Because in reality furintol ara furire kunudin tomar nijor furintol rakhta parta na. যদি একটা situation হয় where you have to choose between your daughter and your daughter-in-law, you choose your daughter. Let's be real. Ara furi এই সময় আরো ফুরি যে সময় বউ ফার লগে তোরা দরবার হয়ে যায়, then that's it. You're going to take your son's side. You're not going to take your daughter. Very rarely have I seen, and I have seen it. I have seen mother-in-laws take their daughter-in-law's side when their sons have completely gone the other way, when they've done something that's completely that the family are unhappy with.
Yeah.
So you do get in-laws who support daughter-in-laws, but in reality, then কিচ্ছু করা লাগতো না, কিচ্ছু ইয়ে করা লাগতো না, আমরা সপ্তাহ করবো, আমরা ফুয়াটা খালি আইয়া, you know, মায়া হর্তা. That's not reality.
That's not reality.
That's not reality, because একলা থাকো, নাইলে হর হরির লগে থাকো, নাইলে জেসা in-laws-এর লগে থাকো, তো তোমার কাম করা লাগবো, তোমার চোজ তো তুমি করতেই পাই. You know, you gotta cook, you gotta clean, you gotta tidy, you gotta do all of those, because you would have had to do it if you live on your own anyway.
Yeah, of course. So you know, obviously আমরা ফুরিন হিসাবে আমরা নিজের মা বাবার গরো আমরা একলে রান্না বাড়া হিকি, চলাফিরে হিকি, আটানি হিকি, ওটাই কি, but then going into another household তারার way হিকা লাগে, or you know, ইলা হইছে না ওলা হইতেইব, ইতা রান্না হিকাম পারি না, ইতা রান্না হইছে না. How are we to avoid this? This situation আমরা কিলা avoid হতা? I know you kind of said that should be compromised করতে হইব.
Yeah. The thing is, I don't go to যদি বলো, obviously you have to know that this daughter, this daughter-in-law of yours is not going to know your ways. এটা তো ওই no, you know, the way I was brought up, and believe it or not, আমি একটা দিন বেলা দিনে গোরা খামো করছি না. That's I didn't go out. আমার গোরা কিছু করতাম না. My dad used to say, "Take the গোরার মেহমান." But when I went to my in-laws, it was a completely different story. You know, obviously, you know, they had a big family, and it was they're traditional, so they were very different to how my family are. So obviously,
you have to adjust.
You just have to adjust.
Difference.
You know, you have to adjust. Whether you live alone with your husband or whether you live with your in-laws, you as a beau have to adjust. You know, you've got to adjust, because if I was to move out straight away with my husband, I would have had to adjust. I would have had to cook and clean anyway. Because আমার মা বাবা কোনো কিছু করছে না, but he knows that to করা লাগ, you know, I would have had to.
Obviously, you've had your holiday.
Yeah, I've had my holiday, you know, and you know, when you move in with your in-laws, you'd have to do it anyway. And obviously, your in-laws have to be mindful that you're from a different family, and that you've not been brought up like the way they have been, and you may not have the same mindset as them. They've got to be mindful of that. They've got to compromise, and they've got to, you know, ensure that they're not putting you at difficulties.
You know, could you like bad muke khwa lage na, just like, oh, ami hikai mune tumhare khilaf karta, isn't it, rather than saying uise na khikam na.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know people who've lived with their in-laws, in-laws khani bala face na kore asta khani yo plate or mazola dalia rakhi disoin, then ifta mozoise na tumara dekhai rigu mozoise na asta dalia. You know, there's so many situations like that, and the reality is, jodi tumar moton randa sao, cook yourself. Yeah, যদি তুমি নিজেও cook রান্না চাও না, তো তোরা হিকাও বলে হিকাও নাইলে, you know, it takes time. Everything takes time, and you've got to accept that. You know.
Okay.
For excessive research and bad experiences, he finally found out Sure Secure, the best CCTV security service systems provider. They have experience over 15 years long. They provide quality and professional security installations, from intruder alarms to CCTV systems, in addition to access control. Their products are of the highest quality, using up-to-date technology equipment range. Their CCTV range allows for live viewing, playback, and the ability to digitally zoom using high-definition images. The CCTV images can be monitored in crystal clear Full HD 1080p and 4K quality with a smartphone, tablet, desktop computer, or even your laptop. With Sure Secure, now Bob can check up on his properties remotely from anywhere in the world. After each installation, they make sure that you are fully trained in order to use the equipment and respond quickly to any fault. Whether you're looking for domestic, commercial, or industrial services, Sure Secure will design and build the perfect security system for all your needs.
Hello viewers, welcome back. Under break after Islam. Now we're back. Sorry, we couldn't give you any notice. So if we continue, my next question to you was, you know, একজন বউ গরো গিয়া হারলে যদি হরিও তাহই আস্তে আস্তে তো বউয়ে সপ্তাহ হিকইন সপ্তাহ বুঝা ধরেন যে এই ফ্যামিলি খিলা জোহরা সলথাম খিলা ট্রুলি একজন হরিয়ে সারা ফুল পাওয়ার এন্ড রেসপন্সিবিলিটি একজন বউরে দিলাইতা পারবানি যে ইউ নো হোয়াট এখন তোমার সংসার তুমি করো আমি ইন দ্য ব্যাকগ্রাউন্ড
আমার personal experience ওর মাঝে no I've not seen this is just my personal experience. I've not seen, I'm trying to think about everybody that I know that's a daughter-in-law and a mother-in-law. I've not seen a mother-in-law hand the keys to the daughters, keys to the daughter, a daughter-in-law, and say, you know what, I've often seen Bangladeshi mother-in-laws try to keep as much control as possible until the end.
Until the end.
And
do you think that's also here? It's the same thing?
Of course. I think, and it is something that my sister-in-law once pointed out, that we're probably at the last set of generations who are going to be like that. She thinks, and I agree with her, the next set of generation, i.e. when we're mother-in-laws, we're probably going to be completely different to how,
I'm not going
the better, yeah.
Okay. So we've already kind of covered so in my experience basically, so I'm going to give you a little story. It's not my personal experience, but it's a story that I've heard while I was doing these research. So there's a okay, modern family structure basically. So horiya ke taron kham thake yalle thain randilila thain randoin than fua furi shobol lagi but bol lagi portion থাকে না so jesa hoyto ibo bat mas to portion লাগে না bat mas ranchun na it would be like English food, so it would portion kora so পাঁচজন মানুষ গরো তাহলে তাই পাঁচজন রান্দিতা so thain huruta tan jamai so bogoro yalle thai খাইতো কিটা nothing so thai যে দিন রান্দিতো thai সবল লাগি রান্দিতো cuz পাঁচজনের লাগি রান্দি আর ছয়জনের লাগি রান্দি is the same আমার লাগি সমান but এই সিচুয়েশনের মাঝে যেসাই ফুয়াই কিতা করতো
ফুয়াই থার্ড প্লেটটা নিয়া তার খানিরে আধা খান করিয়া বউরে আধা খান দিত হে আধা খান নিত
but how does that make him feel আর কিলা লাগে can you understand to be in that situation must be so difficult
but the thing is Islamically a man marries a woman the mother-in-law does not marry the daughter-in-law.
Oh, really?
A man marries a woman. He gets her from another man's house, from her father's home, into his home. And then it is his responsibility, if he's going to take a woman from another person's home into his home with his family, it's his responsibility to ensure that she is safe and that she's happy. And that nothing of injustice is happening to her. Yeah. You don't marry your mother-in-law. Yeah. You don't marry your in-laws. You don't marry anyone from there. It's your husband you marry. And Islamically, and our Prophet, peace be upon him, have said that, then it's your responsibility as a husband to ensure that she's been treated well. And then don't give any to her. Then you as a husband should raise with your mother in the most respectful way possible. No one's saying be disrespectful. In the most, you can be respectful and say, Mom, you've cooked for everybody. She's here in the house. She lives with us. She's part of this family. She's my wife. If you cooked for everybody, why is it that she's excluded? In circumstances like that, a son should raise this with his mom. And even if his mom doesn't want to listen and say, Dur behaya, or whatever it is that he says, then he should cut his portion off and give her the half, or give his plate to her, so the mother understands how it's like.
How important it is.
Why should she have to suffer because of your mother?
Of course, but in situation takiyaki, what happened is Tara eventually Tara gor sariya gesu jamaye boliya hori giso because there's some situation
that's perfect.
But in situation er maze ekhon dekha যায় যে বউবাদ সবে হইরা বউবাদ ও বউয়ে ফুয়ালুইয়া গেছে কি ও হরির লগে থাকে খাইতা পারছই না একলা এক ফুয়া হরির তো আর কেউ নাই হরুর আর কেউ নাই ও ফুয়াই ও
খানি মানে দিতা নানি খানি লগে কোন ডিসিশন করবা you know it's really bad in some cases where mother-in-laws treat their daughter-in-laws in that manner and they think যেন আর বেটার ফুরি লইয়াছি so what তাই আমরা গরর খামার ফুরি নাইলে it'll treat them in any form including not give her food তাই তাই খামর তাই সব রাখা বাইরে তাই যদি আইয়ারান
তাই রান্দিলে একটি সবল লাগি
যদি তো why can't you do the same তো you deserve your son leaving you
বা এই সিচুয়েশনের মাঝে তো বউ বাদ ফুয়াও বাদ নাই হরিও বাদ নাই বউ বাদ আই খাইকুর ফুরিন হলা বাট এখান যদি দেখা যায় বিকজ আমরা ব্যাক স্টোরি জানি আমরা বুঝতাম পারলাম যে এই সিচুয়েশনের মাঝে যে শি ইজ দ্য ভিকটিম বিকজ তাই যে রান্দে তাই তো তাই হরির লাগিও রান্দে শি ডাজন্ট এক্সক্লুড হার যে ও তুমি আমার এক্সক্লুড করছো আই এম গোনা এক্সক্লুড ইউ anyhow আমরা so হরি বউর সম্পর্ক how can we encourage people bala rakhal lagi the সম্পর্ক খিলা bala rakhta
obviously like I said and that next generation probably would be a lot different because people who have been born or have been brought up in the UK they have a different form of mentality that they everybody's kind of working, everybody has or understands the need of a career, everybody has a modern or British mentality so to say. So obviously things are going to be different, one would hope things would be different in the next generation, but for now I think what's important for mother-in-laws to understand is that for furilo yaile if you tai logo jodi khaite sao a thousand tai takto tomar far loge ek goro maze then you've got to respect her in the same way your daughter-in-law has to respect you. It's a two-way street. You can't disrespect your daughter-in-law and expect her to sit there listening because loads of daughter-in-laws do that. Horinta khotota matoin khotota hunain kusaya matoin, some horino tahono kusaya matoin khali give digs, like make derogatory terminologies, use foul language or just say things that are inappropriate and that will make your daughter-in-law unhappy. Other mother-in-laws are even worse and they get physically abusive and some find their aid their mother, and I've seen this in my professional and my personal life. I've seen this and it happens and to me I think who on earth are you to do that to your daughter-in-law? She's married your son. As if you want to live with her, if you want her to live in your home, then you've got to respect her. And the thing is, as a hori, you lead by example. You give that example out how one should treat another person, and if hopefully your daughter-in-laws will look at that and treat you the same back.
Okay. So we have a little twist to our show today. We have Voice of Reason with us. Voice of Reason, can you hear us?
Hello.
Hello. Hi. Welcome to the show.
Yes, thank you for inviting me.
That's okay. So the twist to today's show is obviously amra to khali burinte betinte matiyar. So let's have a voice of reason, the men's side. So voice of reason. How do you think men betainte ba fuainte kila encourage korta parba je bou ar mar সম্পর্ক bala থাকতো?
Okay, can I just first of all start off by saying the story that you shared, it's really sad that what happened, and it's really sad in terms of how the outcome sort of came into fruition. But what I will say is there's really no right or wrong answers. All we have is really experiences. And ultimately, it's about, I think, everybody recognizing boundaries and recognizing that differences and appreciating personal space. So in short, what I would say, I mean, again, when you talk about living with your in-laws, I think the by and large, a lot of people actually stay with their in-laws is because financially, I mean, aside from the benefit, but financially, it's not possible for them to sort of move out. So, because of I suppose the financial strength that they have to live with their in-laws, and that's when you sort of, whether you like it or not, you will have all these sort of difficulties. But what I would say in terms of maintaining a healthy relationship, I would say move out as soon as you can, because let's be realistic, it's very difficult and challenging when you have. I mean, look, aside from your spouse, right? Even when you're living with your siblings, right? You have your own differences, and that in itself, creates huge differences. And that's just your siblings. So, the best thing is, I would say, probably move out if you can move out and maintain a relationship that way. And I think when your guest Khalida, mentioned that, in fact, when you do move out, the relationship becomes a lot better. I think the saying, absent makes the heart grow fonder, and I think there's a lot of truth to that as well. So, I mean, going back to the example that your story that you shared, in terms of the mother-in-law making food for their children, but not for the daughter-in-law, what should the son have done? I think in that situation, what the son should have done, he should have made sure that he cooks for his wife, right? He should have cooked for his wife.
I was saying he should give his half or his entire plate to her.
No, but
I'm glad we
but then
agree on that one.
Yeah.
but she may not like it, but she may not like his mother's food, right? So he should have gone into the kitchen and made food for his wife, and also, setting an example for his mother. Look, if you're not going to cook for my wife, I will cook for my wife. Equally, what he could have also done is he could have actually taken to a nice restaurant every time that his mother's not cooking for her. He should have taken to a nice restaurant or got food from outside for her. Making sure that that her sort of needs are met that way. And again, when your guest Khalida mentioned that when you marry somebody, you know, ultimately it's the husband's responsibility to make sure that there's a roof over his wife's head, there's food on the table for her, and that she's clothed, right?
Mm,
Again, her going out and working, I mean, that's really secondary. And what I mean by that, it's really his responsibility to make sure she's fine. In that sense, she doesn't need to work. If she wants to work, that's her decision. And look, again, I do recognize in today's society, if you want to go on these nice holidays, want the nice cars, want a house, it is, it is essential, I suppose, that both parties work
parties work.
together. Yeah, so
Okay.
they can afford the nice things, right? Otherwise, it is difficult. But I think it's again, as I said, I go back to my initial point: is the education needs to be centered around more by understanding the boundaries, and appreciating and recognizing those differences and recognizing personal space.
Hmm. So, Khalida, this is a question for you. Bohorir maze thor relationship or problem amrar culture or maze ni na, or do you think onyo culture or maze or
Yeah, I think it does extend to other cultures as well. And I say that because any other culture that has a tradition where the daughter-in-laws have to come and live with the in-law side of the family, for example, within the Indian culture, within the Pakistani culture, there's loads of different cultures who have that. If there's a tradition where daughter-in-laws have to live with their mother-in-laws or in-laws, then yes, we all face that same problem, don't we?
Okay. Voice of reason. So, what do you think about son-in-law and mother-in-law relationships then? So, একজন ফুরির জামাই and হরির সম্পর্ক, is it similar problems থাকে নি না different kind of relationship থাকে?
I think,
Should help me know.
look, they will be slightly different. And look, we talk about the daughter-in-law staying with the mother-in-law, but also on the flip side, you also have son-in-laws living with the mother-in-law, especially if you got married in Bangladesh, for example, or and the son-in-law will naturally sort of come in initially and stay with the mother-in-law because again, he's not at that moment in time, he's not capable of getting their own place. They need to sort of settle. So it is. It's not. I wouldn't say it's the same. It's not the same, but that itself sort of presents its own challenges, right? Again, going back, the mother-in-law really like your mother. No, she's not. And that's not. But what you can do is have that sort of respect for your mother-in-law. And I think sometimes, like for example, if the son-in-law does something that's not the liking to the mother-in-law, it's quite difficult to address that. Whereas if it's your own son, you can say, "Hey, guru hanai," yeah, you can, you can do that, but your mother-in-law can't say that to you, right? And equally, similarly, like even with if it's the daughter-in-law, right? And this goes back, go when we say, you know, Bore Furi Lahandekmu or Damande for Lahandekmu, you can't. Yeah, that's not a street because if
Mhm.
your mother swears at you, your own mother swears at you, right? And this is why you call it unconditional love, right? You'll you'll just take on the chin and then you become a khalfara, yeah, and that's
Mhm.
perfectly fine. But if it's your mother-in-law doing that to you, right? If it's your mother-in-law doing that to you, you're like,
Yeah,
"You be jamani take kita
of
koi,"
course.
yeah,
Yeah.
so you will be, and again, look, we talked about domestic violence against the daughter-in-law, subject, being subject to at the hand of the mother-in-law, even the son-in-law. But also sometimes, yeah, I know this may sound a bit funny, but it does happen, where the son-in-law is actually subject to domestic violence from the wife, right? These things happen, and then the son is,
And yeah, you're right.
yeah,
It does. It does.
and the thing is, and then sometimes also the way the daughter-in-law actually treats the son-in-law in front of her family as well, like she'll ridicule him, in certain things, and these things happen. And again, like it's with these small things. Initially, it's nothing, but then over time, you know,
Mm.
when they aggregate, I mean, it just sort of build up of layers and layers, that's what it is. Eventually, it causes a lot of problem, and unfortunately sometimes it's at the point of no return. I mean, we're living in a society where when marriage breaks up, you can understand if it's where someone's being sort of you've had infidelity within the relationship, and that's understandable. But I finally, where you'd find is because he amara saba na dise na, or tayo, tayo bishi, sinidili si sarmazi,
Like
yeah.
ফুরির জামাইরও হলো like obviously তারা যদি in-laws এর লগে থাকে তারারও abuse হইতে
Oh,
পারে. They could face the
yeah.
same challenges as ফুয়ার বউ।
Yeah, look, I mean, I'll give you an example. I mean, I heard of a story where a really young couple got married, and the mother-in-law, again, very young, and she wanted to. I mean, for her, it was her only son, and she did everything for her son, right? So when they first got married, the mother-in-law wanted to go and pick her son up from the train station, but she's like, "I want to pick up my husband," right? Now, obviously, there was a build-up of all this, right? And eventually, it was the straw that broke the camel back, right? So over that, unfortunately and sadly, they divorced. So it doesn't issue. Oh yes, and the other thing I wanted to add is what we also have to recognize is that our parents, right, when they, they say, "Oh, this is tara horhori say right? So this horhori say a lot of them, they don't really, let's be honest, really fully understand and appreciate how to become
Mm.
a father-in-law or mother-in-law, right? And a lot of it is, I suppose, the education is more from, I suppose, in terms of what they see in TVs, right? So when you see the
রইসইন থাকসইন হরির লগে থাকসইন না। So they তারা freedom মতো চলছেন। So maybe এটা তারা understand করে না that angle of it.
Yeah, and absolutely. And what I wanted to add was a lot of it, like again, I know like a lot of our mothers, they work, they watch these, Indian natoks, right? And
Oh, I
it's
have to
very
pause you there for a second. You need to pause on that one, because we're going to cover it a bit later. So
okay.
yeah, just pause there for a sec. So moving on swiftly from that. So Boriho relationship, but tahok bala tahok, it does affect the children.
Yeah, of course.
So you have children.
Yes.
So they have a good relationship with you. They have a good relationship with their dad's side. Do you see how the positive impacts of having the wider family like it kila tarare influence in how they're thinking the tarar
Yeah.
future kila tahbo.
I mean, the thing is, in this day and age, this is where people like me, people who are in my situation, where we're at a bit of a difficulty, is that we live a very modern British lifestyle. We ideally don't want our children to follow a Western lifestyle. We
Yeah.
want them to continue an Islamic lifestyle. We want them to have a balance. We want them to ensure. I want to ensure that my children, the culture, cultural background they're from, that this is installed in them, that they have that in them. And obviously, I can't do that without my in-laws, my family. You know, I need my
You need them.
yeah, I need both side of their families involved in order for that to happen. I speak to my husband in English. I can't even remember if I speak to him properly, but you know, and my children, they speak in English with me. They speak in English with their dad. I spoke to my dad in English. We barely spoke in Bengali, and that's how. But because we spoke to my mum in Bengali,
you know the language.
We know the language, and my children, their Bengalis, you know, it's questionable. It's not that great, you know, but I want them to learn Bengali. I want them to learn the cultural background of, you know, where they're from, how things were done, how, you know, I want them to have that in them. And that's why it's really important for me to ensure that my children have a relationship with my in-laws, and my side of the family. So yeah, there are a lot of benefits in keeping a relationship, but obviously, if the negative outweighs the positive, then that's when you cut the cord.
So I suppose, Amra, we have to know what our rights and responsibilities are. আমরা rights kita, responsibility kita je আমরা বউই আর হরিওই আর ফুয়াওই, different responsibility in different angles, right?
Yeah.
So how can we educate our people in the way that, you know, this is your right, this is your responsibility. তুমি মার সম্পর্ক রাখতে হইব, বউর সম্পর্ক রাখতে হইব, বাপ ওইয়াও চলতে হইব, ফুয়াইয়াও চলতে হইব.
Well, I hope they're listening to your radio show today. That will give them a level of education. But in reality, Amina, you know, if you want your marriage to work, you've got to understand that you've got to, you know, both sides of the family have to compromise. She's got to compromise. You've got to. Your mum has to. You know, if you see something is wrong, if you see that your mother has done something to your wife and it's wrong, then it's your responsibility to raise it. Some people don't raise it. They do the silent treatment, so they just stay quiet. So, you know, and they do
right
that.
But you can do it like respectfully to me.
Yeah, you can.
Sort out.
In fact, you should be telling the person that has done wrong. You should go up to them and you should say it. If it's your mother or your wife, whichever it is, you should say to them, you know, respectfully, this is what you've done. This is wrong. You shouldn't be doing that. I would say to my mum, if my mum treated my husband poorly, I'd say you're being unfair. You know, and you should have that. Just because I say that to my mum, it doesn't mean I'm disrespecting her. So it's really important for people to realize, and you know, you have to, if someone has done something wrong, it's important to raise it, you know. So next time and you want your wife to walk out, then by all means let your mother treat them like that. No.
I agree. Voice of reason. So do you agree, disagree?
I don't disagree. I think, look, again, ultimately, I think this is something that I sort of learned I suppose the hard way, growing up. You know, when your parents, you know, when you find your parents, I suppose, in the wrong, I don't think they're malicious. I think it's a lot of it is down to understanding. You know, how do you address that? And ultimately, what we have to recognize, first of all, you know, paradise lies underneath our mother's feet, right? So how can we sort of attain that without disrespecting them, making them upset? And sorry?
Say it politely to your mother.
Sometimes that doesn't even work, right? You know, sometimes that results in a singular buddy.
No, but maybe আমরা মা বাবাকেও এডুকেট করতে হইব যে যদি আমরা তোমার কাছে কোনো একটা প্রবলেম লইয়াই বা কিছু লইয়াই, তুমি বুঝতে হইব যে আমি ফেনেই কান কইরা.
I think most in-laws get a bit offended then বোর সামনে মাইরা কইরা আম্মা এগুলো করছো. So you don't need to do it in front of your wife. You could do it privately.
I was going to say, even privately, when you're doing it, it doesn't always work. And I guess what I was trying to get at was that sometimes you make, I suppose, if your spouse or, you know, your wife or even your husband recognizes that you recognize that actually, do you know what, my mom was wrong, or even my siblings were wrong, and then look, my mom's my mom. She's not going to change her mindset, unfortunately. But look, this is what I'm trying to do for us. I'm trying to move away from us here. But let's just be our mothers. And that's what it is. And that's what I mean. I learned the hard way. You just sometimes let your parents be as they are. Because look, again, you know, ultimately, you know, we're not here for that long, right? Ultimately, we're all going to die one day, yeah? And none of this is really worth it, right? Let's be honest here. For our peace of mind, I mean, you covered mental health last week. You know, this all has an effect on our mental health as well. And, you know, this isn't really worse. So when you sort of have that mindset that actually, do you know what, I don't need this, right? Let me just try and make it work with my wife. My mom's going to be my mom. My mother-in-law is going to be mother-in-law. Let's just us concentrate on ourselves and our kids, right? And that's all you can do.
I mean, the only way to achieve that is move out.
Yeah,
most of us,
and that's what I said.
But it's true. If you can't maintain the peace and no one, by speaking to, whoever's done wrong, it's not resolved matters, the only other solution is move out. There's nothing wrong with moving out, so long as you know that, the thing is, this is a problem that most men have. They have a responsibility towards their parents. And they want to ensure that their parents are being cared for in their old age, for example, and they don't want to leave the home thinking that it's not, it's a son's duty to look after his parents, just like the way it's a mother's duty to look after their young children, young suckling children, but when it's not a daughter-in-law's responsibility to look after her in-laws, it's not her responsibility. That's why you've got the son. The son will do that. They both find barriers to sign now because they think mama have to look after her. Obviously, that's where they're stuck and they're at a difficulty. And I think in those circumstances, the only other way you can resolve matters is by just speaking to the people. Because not everybody wants to move out, or as Anonymous has said, not everybody has the means to move out.
So, sort of like, how can women then support their husband? Let's say we move out to Igiso. Me এখন আলগা গরো রইরা থাকরায় বাট এখন জামাই যাইরা মা বাপর গরো তারারও দেখায় তুমি কিলা তারারে সাপোর্ট করতে পারবা to continue that and fulfill his duties as a son.
Obviously, it's important for the daughter-in-law to accept that her husband will visit his family. And it should be regular. It should be regular. I encourage my husband, go see your, sometimes I tell him, you go, I'll stay at home, you take the kids, go, just for peace and quiet from him and the kids. But,
you get brownie points for that.
Well, I don't know. I've got to ask him if he gives me brownie points for that. But, whatever it is, it's important that the wives recognize that, their husband has a duty towards their parents, and he should go and see his parents and family and keep in contact with them. And it's it's important for the daughter-in-law to go to the in-laws and keep a good relationship, because that's what's healthy for you, for the in-laws, for your children. This is what they're going to look at,
Yes. So, voice of reason. So after that, as a son or as a husband, like kita important monochoro, or for any men really, the erson boy killer husband help but to maintain those relationships.
I think again, it goes back to what I said in the beginning. It's about recognizing those boundaries, right? So for if you're a wife, it's about, I suppose, understanding that, look, my husband does have a duty towards his mother in terms of making sure she's okay. How can I best support my husband the best I can? And look, and it has to be a two-way thing, right? Always kind of giving, and then if the husband doesn't recognize those sort of sacrifices or those sort of endeavors by the wife, over time, the wife's going to feel neglected. So as much as it is for the wife, I think it's also, it's also important for the husband to recognize those sort of endeavors, and then show appreciation. And then look, generally when someone does something for you and you show that appreciation, generally that those endeavors will go on further. And look, and I've seen it even if you take away marriage and you do it at work, a lot of what I do at work, I make sure I get things done by appreciating people, by recognizing their efforts, right? And again, human beings,
appreciation but you can show some sort of the আমি দেখছি তুমি ওলা করছো বা আমি একটা বালা পাইছি যে তুমি ওলা ট্রিট করছো আমার ফ্যামিলি রে, বা তুমি একদিন সারা দিন লইয়া ঘুরাইছো আমার আম্মারে হসপিটালে লইয়া গেছো জোরছো, তুমি যাও বারা যাও গিয়া শপিং করিয়া একদিন, it's just a bit of give and take, isn't it? Bit of give and take. Okay, so we're slowly coming to the end of the show, so I'm going to go to a fun question which you almost spoiled for me, voice of reason. So
sorry.
This is a question question to both of you is, right, so আমরা তো both Indian serials দেখি, movies দেখি. Do you think that এটা দেখিয়া আমরা like mentality change হয়ে গেছে যে আমরা বউ ইয়া চলতাম কিনা, আমরা হরি ইয়া চলতাম কিনা, ওটা দেখি দেখি আমরা একটা influence হয়ে গেছে?
It doesn't help. These Indian dramas are made for drama, and it's made to show. Obviously, tara banay to manushe entertain korar lagi, you know. So obviously, if you start learning from there, then you know, be assured that your marriage is going to be in difficulties, you know. Yeah, so unfortunately, it doesn't help, and obviously, it's for entertainment purposes. It's not for you to sit there and educate yourself.
entertainment
Yeah.
no natok holo ya gese on amaro holo ito desoni holo ise. So voice of reason, obviously from a male point of view, what do you think, do Indian programs or serials or Bollywood as such influence our thinking?
I mean, look, generally, when you look at those sort of Indian dramas, right, and it's very much structured like a matriarchal sort of structure, if you like, where the mother-in-law has the reign to the house, to the family, and miraculously, when they all wake up in the morning, all the daughter-in-laws, they got immaculate makeup and immaculate clothing on, right? you know, and it's a look. Yeah, and look, you mentioned this is drama, and look, ultimately it's a reflection. You can sort of, as an extension, say, well, this is no different to real life. The drama is projected on us, right? And it's for entertainment. And the sad reality is, and this is the sad reality, people outside the family will look at your family and see it as drama. Yeah, and that's what exactly. Yeah, and that's exactly what really really happens. So yes, unfortunately, I think subconsciously you sort of pick up on how how it's projected, and they pick it up and then they sort of implement it in within their own household, right? The mother-in-law will watch all this, and then she will sort of subconsciously implement it.
Yeah. Okay. So just very quickly, let us see if there's any comments online. We've got somebody saying Assalamu alaikum. Sorry, I can't read that Arabic writing, but Mumtaj Chowdhury is saying society and media plays a big influence and not helping as well. Of course, yes, we covered that. Deen Islam already has the rules and laws in place and how to maintain each and every relationship. But if only we practice and take to consideration, then we can live harmoniously. Yes, of course. Yes, definitely agree. We also touched on that.
Of course, it's for both parties.
Yeah.
Everybody has to follow that rule.
Please discuss about importance of mother. Maybe we can bring that onto another show at some point.
Yeah.
Yes, of course. We understand the importance of mother. Next comment this week. That one. Momtaj is saying it's also dependent on lack of education and the mentality we carried on for a long time. Also, things depend on a family dynamics and background of a family. Culture pressure plays a big role too. Of course, yes.
I'm going to take out the education bit because not everybody is educated. You don't have to be educated in order to be a better person and understand how family dynamics should work.
Yeah, someone say, Rahena is saying that setting positive boundaries between both of us is very important and not expectations. I think that definitely makes sense that, yes, this is my boundary, this is my boundary.
I mean, a daughter-in-law has to walk in knowing that she's going to have to do household chores. She's going to have to do it. You'd have to do it with your in-laws. So obviously you need to walk in accepting that. But obviously at the same time, she can't be treated as if, she's come here just to do your entire cooking and cleaning. So it's what one of your viewers have said. There needs to be a balance.
There has to be a balance, absolutely. So I scored the show. I don't know, so to my dear guests, thank you very much for both of you coming, Khaleda and Voice of Reason. What would you like to finalize and say in your final words to our viewers and on this topic?
I think I'm going to keep this short, and I'm going to say that it's important for both daughter-in-laws and mother-in-laws to try and understand how to create a good relationship with one another. The mother-in-law needs to ensure that and they are better for the and then she has to make sure that hammer between to la restriction restriction exactly. And in the same manner, a daughter-in-law has to walk into the house knowing that she's joining a family. She's got to culturally and however the family is mesh with them. She has to adjust with them. It's the party adjust with people. You can't think amar gor aisote amar la khansola amar gor ita khole you're gonna have difficulties. And the same way a daughter-in-law walks into the house, she can't be like amia ila khorsina go amar gor mazamia khoriarona. You can't do that. Obviously a daughter-in-law has to contribute towards the house, and in the same way the mother-in-law has to accept that there are going to be changes by bringing somebody else into the home. So it's a learning curve for both parties, and the son has to be fair, because that will be the reason for your marriage to come to an end, and obviously no one gets married and spends thousands and thousands of pounds just to end their marriage.
And voice of reason, your final words?
No, I just want to sort of echo what your other guest Khaleda mentioned. I mean, look, ultimately, if you respect each other's boundaries and again, if you're going to get married, look, the best, I'm generalizing it here, but the best way you can ensure that you have a happy marriage is try and move out. If you can't afford to move out, have a plan, and make sure your spouse recognizes that plan. And is on board with that plan, because as I said, especially if you've got a large family, you're going to be stepping on toes. It's going to be difficult, right? Especially living in this modern society. So,
okay, well, thank you both for your input. So, dear viewers, as you can see, I'm like a mixed response, spicy, but we got both sides. We got our, the kind of like a female point of view, a male point of view.
I think me and Anonymous are pretty much on the
same level, though. You both have the same understanding, which is good in that sense. আমরা ওটা মনে রাখতাম হইব যে সব ফ্যামিলির মাঝে হরিব সব বাদ নাই, সব বালাও নাই। সব ফ্যামিলির মাঝে প্রবলেম একটা না একটা থাকতে পারে, বা একজনে আরেকজনকে কনসিডার করিয়া কি চলতাম হইব। আমরা কালচারাল রাইটস, রিলিজিয়াস রাইটস আমরা মনে রাখতাম হইব। প্লাস আমরা যদি হরিব যদি দুজন সুন্দর হইয়া চলতা পারেন, then সবও খুশ, বাট সবচেয়ে বেশি খুশ the son and the husband. সবচেয়ে বেশি খুশ তাই। So next week আমরা নতুন একটা টপিক লই আইমু, নতুন গেস্ট থাকবা, and আমরা join করেন যেন for the next week's show, Friday at 5 p.m. only on Relaks Radio Bangla. Thank you to my guests. Thank you to my viewers for being with us today. Shob bala tahoka, shusto tahoka, and until next week.
Goodbye.
সকাল দুপুর সন্ধ্যা রাতে তোমার আমার কথা হবে রিল্যাক্স রেডিও বাংলায়, রিল্যাক্স রেডিও বাংলা।